Most professionals think competence means staying informed. That used to be enough when change moved slower. In an AI-shaped workplace, awareness without judgment is just noise, because everyone can see the trend and almost nobody can explain what it means for decisions. The old assumption is simple. If I know the term, I understand the topic. That is how people confuse familiarity with capability. A leader can repeat the buzzword and still be unable to decide, prioritize, or explain the business impact. Awareness matters because you cannot act on what you do not notice. But in enterprise cloud, digital transformation, or any high-stakes shift, awareness is only the first gate. It gets you into the room. It does not tell you what to do once you're there. What changed is the pace and the ambiguity. A concept can go from niche to board discussion in months. A leader who waits for perfect clarity will always be late, and in hypergrowth or restructuring, late is just a polite word for irrelevant. Most leaders get stuck at awareness because they mistake exposure for understanding. They read the article, attend the keynote speaker session, maybe forward the memo, and call it learning. But they have not yet formed a view that can survive contact with reality. The second step is point of view. That means you have studied the concept enough to have a position, not just an opinion. You know where it helps, where it breaks, what assumptions it depends on, and what would make you change your mind. A real point of view is not a hot take. It is a tested mental model. In a meeting, that sounds like, here is the bet, here is the risk, and here is what we should watch before scaling. That is different from sounding confident. This matters more in AI because the tools make everyone look faster before they are actually wiser. A team can generate output quickly and still make poor choices. Speed without judgment just helps you make mistakes at enterprise scale. Leaders often misunderstand prototyping here. They think they need a full rollout to earn a view. They do not. A small experiment, a pilot, or a scenario walkthrough can reveal more than a month of abstract debate. The mental model is simple. Awareness tells you what exists, point of view tells you what it means, and expression determines whether anyone can use it. If the last step fails, your insight dies in your head or gets buried in a long slide deck. Expression is where many strong professionals quietly lose their edge. They know the thing, they have done the thinking, but they cannot make it land for the audience. The result is a thoughtful idea delivered in a way that sounds vague, technical, or self-protective. Expression is not about sounding polished, it is about being precise for the audience in front of you. The way you explain a security trade-off to a board member should not sound like the way you explain it to an engineering manager. That is especially true in human resources, where leaders often need to translate complexity into decisions people can actually live with. If the message is too abstract, teams fill in the blanks with fear. If it is too dense, they stop listening. A useful point of view should answer 3 questions. What is true, what is uncertain, and what action follows now? That structure keeps you from overselling certainty or hiding behind ambiguity. Both are common, and both are expensive. In high-stakes work, especially bet the company transformations, people do not need your full research trail. They need your judgment. They need to know whether this is a watch item, a priority, or a distraction dressed up as urgency. This framework also changes how you delegate. If a teammate only gets awareness, they will improvise from guesswork. If they get a point of view, they can make better decisions. If they get clear expression, they can carry the message without distortion. Think about a product team hearing about a new technology trend. One leader says, look into it. Another says, we think this could reduce cycle time in support workflows, but only if the data quality holds. The second leader is already operating at a higher level. The same logic applies in a board update. If you say, we are exploring it, you sound busy. If you say, we have 3 use cases, 1 pilot, and 1 risk that could slow scale, you sound like someone who can run the company through uncertainty. In digital transformation, many programs fail because leaders stay at the level of awareness. Everyone knows change is needed. The difference is whether someone has a defensible view on sequencing, trade-offs, and what not to do yet. A strong point of view is not stubbornness. It is a working hypothesis. Good leaders update it when evidence changes, which is why the framework is not linear once and done. It is a loop that gets sharper with use. That loop is how experienced operators stay useful across enterprise cloud, AI, security, and the future of work. They do not pretend to know everything. They know how to notice, think, and communicate before the room moves on without them. The leaders who struggle are often the ones who wait to feel fully ready. But competence in changing environments is not about certainty. It is about forming a view early enough to influence the work, then expressing it clearly enough that others can act. There is also a social dimension here. People trust professionals who can say, "I have looked at this, here is my take, and here is where I might be wrong." That combination of clarity and humility is rare, and it travels well across teams. In meetings, this shows up as shorter, sharper contributions. Not less thoughtful, just less buried. You do not need to narrate every branch of your thinking. You need to land the decision-relevant part and let the room move. In writing, it means leading with the conclusion, then the reasoning, then the implication. People are busy. If they have to excavate your point like an archaeologist, your insight will not survive the inbox. In delegation, it means telling people not just what to do, but what problem they are solving and what success looks like. That is how you avoid the classic trap where a smart person executes the wrong interpretation very efficiently. In feedback, it means being direct about the gap between awareness and expression. Someone may understand the issue, but fail to explain it to customers, peers, or executives. That is a solvable skill, not a personality flaw. In prioritization, it means refusing to treat every new concept as equally urgent. Some ideas deserve immediate attention, some deserve a watch list, and some are just noise with better branding. High-stakes leaders need that filtering instinct. This is where humor helps. A room full of smart people can spend 40 minutes agreeing that something is important and still leave with no decision. That is not strategy. That is a very expensive group therapy session. The framework becomes powerful when it is practiced consistently. Read widely enough to notice shifts, test enough to build a view. Then force yourself to explain it simply in language the audience can actually use the next day. If you lead teams, make this a habit in staff meetings. Ask people to name what they are aware of, what point of view they hold, and how they would express it to a different audience. You will quickly see who has real judgment. That practice also exposes where your organization is weak. Some teams are full of awareness and short on conviction. Others have strong opinions but cannot communicate beyond their own function. The gap is usually not intelligence, it is disciplined thinking. For professionals, the goal is not to know every emerging concept. That is impossible. The goal is to build the muscle that turns exposure into perspective and perspective into usable language. That is how you stay competent while the world keeps changing. So this week, pick one concept you keep hearing about. Write down what you are aware of, what your point of view is, and how you would explain it to your boss, your team, and a skeptical peer. If you cannot do that yet, you know exactly where the work is.